I'm John Gurnig with another installment from the Fel-Pro Field Test Garage located in Skokie, Illinois. Today I'm going to be working on a 2007 Hyundai Azera with a 3.8 liter engine. I'm going to be doing a valve cover change out. These valve cover gaskets are starting to leak. I'm going to be installing a molded rubber, perma-dry, press and place gasket that fits into an aluminum cover. So I've got the engine covers and a few other things to get out of the way, and then I'll have this valve cover off. So I've removed the fancy plastic engine cover and started removing some of the screws for the ignition coils and some of the bracketry. Started disconnecting some of the wiring. So I've got a few more things to do to get that all out of the way, and then we'll start removing bolts for the valve cover. One of the things that I like to do before I continue on is I'll get my blowgun out and blow away all the dust, dirt, small birds, rodents, whatever there might be underneath the hood. That way, once I do take the cover off, nothing will fall down inside the engine. I've gotten some of the brackets off now. I've removed the upper coolant hose. All that stuff's out of the way now. I'm almost ready to pull this cover off, but before I do, I want to show you the reason why we're pulling this cover off, and that's because of this oil leakage here down at this front corner here. You can see how wet it is. It's been accumulating there for a while. It's been accumulating in the alternator bracket, and this is an issue that needs to be fixed. You don't want it to go too long. You don't want the customer to have a problem where he runs the engine out of oil, or have some other problems. You know, the customer may smell it, he may not smell it. It could be leaking at some point under the exhaust manifold. Then they might start to smell it. But in any case, this is an issue that needs to be fixed. So we're going to get this cover off, and we're going to replace it with a perma-dry valve cover gasket. So I started taking out some of the valve cover bolts, but something else I forgot to tell you. You know, another reason this valve cover gasket could be leaking is maybe because of compression set, where the rubber is kind of given up, just doesn't have the resiliency like it had before. This particular vehicle has about 84,000 miles on it. So over time, the gaskets they sort of lose their sealing ability. So that could be another reason why we're starting to see that oil leakage here at the front corner. So I've removed all the valve cover bolts from the perimeter. Make sure when you're doing this, there's also 2 bolts around each spark plug to load the spark plug tube gaskets that are underneath here. So make sure you get those out of the way. So they're all off. I'm going to look for a spot to, I'm going to try to pull it off, but I don't think it will come off. It's on there. So I'm going to have to find a spot, kind of break it loose. Go. So in this particular case, we're kind of half stuck to the head, half stuck to the valve cover. That's just what happens. So I'm going to get the cover cleaned up and get the gasket off, clean up the head surfaces, and we'll be ready to install a new gasket. So this area here is what I spoke about earlier, where the oil leakage was coming from. And you know, while I quickly look at it, I can see the gasket isn't torn or ripped or anything, but feeling it, it feels pretty hard. And that's what we call compression set, where over time the rubber, it's squeezed down for so long, it takes a set, and it just doesn't rebound like it should and keep a firm seal between the cylinder head and the valve cover. So that's probably the main reason why it's leaking here. The gasket just it's rock hard, and it just doesn't want to seal anymore. So we're going to get this one off, put a new perma-dry press and place gasket in place, and the customer will be good to go. So I've removed the gasket, got it on the bench, kind of wiped off some of the residual oil that's on it. I just want to take a look at that failed corner where we were seeing the oil leakage, and it's pretty hard in this area, and there's also a crack starting to develop here in the sealing bead. So it's just a gasket that's worn out. It's got too much compression set. It's hard. it's just not working anymore. So out it goes, and we're going to install a new Fel-Pro Perma-Dry press in place gasket and take care of the customer's needs. So after spending some quality time in the parts tank and getting everything all cleaned off, getting the oil off it, and spending some time cleaning the cylinder head, I'm ready to start installing a gasket. But before I do, I want to show you, in this particular case, the left and the right gasket, they are slightly different, so make sure when you take them out of the box, you kind of check them first to make sure that you're going to put the right gasket on the right cover. One of the things that our Fel-Pro engineers do before we ever get to this point of making a gasket is we will buy engine castings and use them to help design the gasket so it's the right fit and the right height, the right thickness, all the things that go into a Fel-Pro gasket, so when you open up that box and go to install that part, you know it's going to fit. One of the things that you should also do before you start installing the gasket is take the gasket and lay it on the cover first. Don't grab the gasket at one end and start pushing it in and work your way around. Typically what happens is you're going to get it all the way around, you're going to get to the other end, and you're going to have a bunch of extra material left, and you're not going to know what to do with it. So then you have to pull it out and start all over again. So you just want to kind of set it in place first, get it kind of roughly in place. Now you know you've got the right gasket for the right cover, and now you can sit there and start working the gasket into the groove. This is what we call press in place, or PIP. So this is a premium material that we make this gasket out of. And you can see it installs quite easily, fits right into the grooves that are cast into the cover, and it's ready to install. Now before I do install it, I want to show you one more thing here at this end of the cover. We've incorporated an extra wide area to seal here, and while you don't see it right here over on the cylinder head, that's where the timing cover meets the cylinder head. So we've incorporated an extra wide area with extra sealing area to make sure that that area gets sealed properly once you install this cover. The other thing to make sure that you do whenever you're installing a molded rubber valve cover like this is clean and dry, clean and dry, clean and dry. Make sure this is clean, dry, there's no solvent, no oil, no liquids of any kind on this cover, because that liquid will act as a lubricant when you go to tighten it up, and it's going to make that gasket slip out of place, and then you're going to have a leak. So I'm just about ready to install this. We'll head over to the engine bay, and we'll put this in place. A couple more things I want to show you before I install this valve cover. If you notice these flat spots around each bolt hole, those are the compression stops. What those are there for is so when you go to tighten up this cover, you don't over compress the gasket and split it or cause extrusion. So that's something that the Fel-Pro engineers take into account when they're designing this gasket. Can't make it too thick or too thin, too tall, because that'll affect the way it gets loaded and could possibly split or give you a leak. Another thing is how the spark plug tubes are incorporated. These seals are incorporated to go around where the spark plug tubes sit. The one last thing that you need to do, I know I said you have to install this gasket clean and dry, but there are two areas on the head that you have to apply a little bit of RTV, and that's where the cylinder head meets the timing cover. So there's one down here, and then there's one up at the top. So sometimes these areas, they fit real nice. This feels pretty good, but there is a split there. So that is a possible leak path. So you want to use a little bit of RTV there to seal those two areas to make sure that you don't have a leak. Don't apply RTV anywhere else on the gasket, only in these two areas where you find a split joint like this. And in this case, a little dab will do ya. Don't overdo it, don't add too much. You know, about the size of a 6mm bolt or a 1/4 inch bolt, that's all you need. So one goes at the bottom, one will go up here at the top. I know it's a little tough to see. That's it. Now I'm ready to install my gasket. So flip it over and slide it into place around some of the brackets, around some of the wires. And it's in place. Now my next step will be to grab the bolts that I've already cleaned, put them in place, just run them down, and then I'll get my torque wrench out and tighten them down to the proper torque. There isn't a sequence for this, but we always recommend that you start from the center, work your way out. So I'll be starting here at the spark plug tubes, and then I'll be starting up here at these middle bolts, and then working my way out. So I'm gonna go get the bolts, put those in, and then we'll torque them up. I've installed all the bolts hand tight, and now I'm ready to use my torque wrench. Now Hyundai gives a spec of 7 to 8 foot-pounds, and I don't like using my 3/8 drive torque wrench for something like this on a valve cover. So I've done the conversion, and it's about 84 inch-pounds. So part of the validation process is we always check our torque wrenches before we install any test gasket to make sure the torque wrench is to the right foot-pounds or inch-pounds, whatever it might be, so that we're not under-tightening or over-tightening the gasket. So I'm going to start here in the center. I have my wrench set at 84 inch-pounds. And like I said, I like to start in the center and work my way out. So I'm going to start first with the spark plug tube seal area, because that's the center. And then I'm going to work myself out to the perimeter bolts. And then once that's all completed, then I can continue on installing the brackets and the ignition coils, the coolant hose, and then I'll be able to fire this up, let it run for a little while, make sure there's no leaks, and customer will be ready to go with a Fel-Pro perma-dry valve cover gasket, and he'll be a happy guy. So I've finished my installation. Everything's back in place, everything's plugged in. I'm going to let it run for a little while, make sure that there's no leakage from the installation I just did. So this was our Fel-Pro perma-dry press in place molded rubber valve cover gasket. I'm going to let it run for a little while, and then I'll install this cover and send the customer down the road. So I'm John Gurnig from the Fel-Pro Field Test Garage in Skokie, Illinois. I'll see you soon.